Good afternoon. Welcome to the Consortium for Higher Education Research in Asia. My name is Gerard POSTIGLIONE. I am the founding director of SHERA and very glad to introduce the talk today. Before I do, I want to remind listeners, because I know we have many people who are online, to remember that on June 2nd to 4th, I believe, the Higher Education Research Association of Asia will hold its annual meeting at the University of Hong Kong.
9 and 10.
The 9th and 10th of June. We're going to delay it by a week to the 9th and 10th. And if you have not registered, there is still time to register. It is going to be approximately the 10th annual conference, 11th annual conference. It happens every year. We move from Hiroshima, Japan, to Seoul, Korea, to Taipei, Taiwan, to Beijing on the mainland, and this year it's going to be in Hong Kong, and next year it will be in Malaysia. So please register for that. Without further ado, let me introduce the topic today and the speaker. I am extremely happy to introduce the speaker because he is an old friend of the University of Hong Kong, Faculty of Education. We have known each other for many years, and there are many members of our faculty who are good friends with Professor Zhou Yisu. And he has a topic which many of us here and online would like to know more about, and some of us are actually doing some research in this area. He's been spending the last few years studying this topic and has quite a bit of data to share with you today. Let me say that he is still a professor at the University of Macau's Faculty of Education, but he is also an adjunct professor in the Department of Sociology and in the Sociology Department at the University of Macau. And he's been interested in this topic for many years. Like me, we've discussed this before, we both started studying education from the bottom up, and also from the east to the west. And now his research for I think the rest of his career will focus on this, because we're now in the stage of we've already moved from elite higher ed to mass higher ed, and now we're moving to 全民教育, 全民高等教育, which is the universal higher education in the mainland of China, but of course it already exists in other countries like Korea and elsewhere. So this is an exciting time for us to have Professor Zhou Yisu give us some of his impressions and his data, his analysis of Hong Kong's role in the development of science and technology in Chinese higher education. Professor Zhou, over to you. And I see you've also had some co-authors.
Yes, I have
two. And
Yao.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Gary, for the very nice and kind introduction. And it's really lovely to be here talking to student, current student, former student, and our colleagues here at Hong Kong U. So as Jerry said, this is a paper actually we wrote last year. We did some revision early this year. We already have a preprint version online. So everybody, I will include the link at the back of the talk. So the paper was the product. Actually, it's a side project based on a book I'm working. I've been working on this book for about 3 years. So I'm trying to understand the rise of technology, science and technology in China. So the project, the book project actually traces 5 research institutes in China through about 18 years of span, from their founding to their development to their mature stage. But during my, it uses a mix of data, qualitative interviews, quantitative data, and et cetera, et cetera. So during this project in the process of doing this project, I realized a lot of a common thing among my interviewees, that many of these scientists, those scientists got their degrees in Hong Kong. And I want to understand what is the scale, the magnitude of this phenomenon, how important is Hong Kong. So that's why I started this project with two of my my graduate students. So these are, it's still ongoing. I will present the findings we have today, but we are still refining the data because, as you will see, it involves a lot of different kinds of data. Okay, so a little bit of introduction. We know that today, when we talk about the current status of science and technology in China, it's kind of a no-brainer when people think China is a scientific powerhouse, but it isn't always the case. Actually, as late as 2019, the British magazine The Economist actually ran a cover story. The cover story has a title that says, "Can China become a scientific superpower?" And in that story, The Economist lists several reasons that they think prohibit China from continued rise. Things like we all understand these days, the restricted academic freedom, the questions about how will China be able to recruit a world-class talent, into its territory to work in these universities or research institutes. Limited international recognition. Many of the in 2019, actually, the Chinese had already been the largest scientific paper publisher in the world, but the qualities of many of these papers are kind of dubious, right? So limited international recognition and the emphasis on quantity over quality. They do publish a lot, but many of these are not in top top journals, and constraints on international collaboration. So that's the cover story, the whole idea. I have a screenshot of this of that coverage in The Economist magazine in 2019. Last year, when I was I spent my sabbatical year at the University of Chicago last year, and in last June, actually, they published another story, a cover story, basically says that China has become a scientific superpower. So, The Economist recognized, saying that China has achieved prominence across a broad area of scientific disciplines, using all kinds of indicators. And it has demonstrated sustained progress in research and application, and essentially reconfigured its established scientific hierarchy. But I think as people who work in higher education or work in universities, we do understand that 5 years is not a very long period, with regard to scientific development. There must be some deeper reasons. So I think this transformation of exceptional speed really warrants some systematic examinations in our in research. But when I'm trying to look for kind of a high quality, kind of a really convincing account, I can't really find any. So that's one of the reasons I started to do that. Let me, before I offer you my explanation, let's take a look at some kind of standard explanations. So I would say there are three kind of standard explanations these days. The first has to do with the extraordinary expansion of higher education system in China. So the expansion started in 1999. It's almost doubled every year in the next decade, and it generates kind of it has generated a generation of skilled professions and with a heavy focus on STEM. So if you know the ballpark number, every year China graduates about 3 million engineers in STEM field. And it also contributes significantly by cultivating STEM talents. And the second explanation has to do with state investment, because the Chinese model has always been lauded as a state-led kind of investment model. So there are three major pieces in the past 15 years that has to do with science and technology. Starting in 2006, there's the MLP, the medium and long-term programs of science and technology. This is one of the first nationwide piece of planning, if you would call it, that gives prominence to science and technology development. And then in 2010, you see the strategic emerging industry. So basically the state picks a series of scientific industries, saying that we need to cultivate them in the next decade. Things like EVs, like batteries, like green energy, solar, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have in 2015, you have now famous or infamous, depending on your view, the Made in China 2025, the initiative, which really picks again another set of national champions, right? And lastly, China really benefited from the international scientific collaboration in the past. So the well-known story is the Sino-American story. So since China has opened up in the reform area in 1978, China and America has built a very long-standing and very robust scientific relationships in all kinds of areas. And if you look at literature, many people will tell you this is the most consequential and most important bilateral country-to-country collaboration in global science. And my data actually will show you that's actually very true, very true. And also that kind of international collaboration provide essential funding and training and international exchange opportunities for the students. So these are the standard explanations. Without like showing you a whole list of reference and everything, let me just give you one graph. I think it really captures how deep the transformation of Chinese higher education really went through. So last year, there's a working paper by the World Inequality Lab, which I highly recommend people to see. So they basically compared the human capital stock in India and in China. All right. So here we have, they break down, the two authors break down the higher education enrollment by different sectors. So you have humanities, laws and business, education, you have science, engineering, medical, and agriculture. All right. And I think what's kind of extraordinary in this paper is they compile a data period over 100 years and shows the structural change in these two countries. So this is China, this is India, right? I think it's very striking how the two countries actually structure their higher education system. So in India, you will see majority of the graduate university students, they are majored in humanities, laws, and business, right? But in China, of course, it's the case before 1949. But if you look at, if you think about when China started reforming its higher education system, 1999, the Great Expansion, where it all started, right? It's basically right here. And you will see a great expansion in engineering and in science, of course, in education as well. All right. So that's sort of the national focus really differs. So while impressive, human capital stock alone, I think they cannot sufficiently explain China's rise. And in my research, I find an interesting angle and an interesting story. This is kind of the backbone of this paper, is that I find Hong Kong actually play a very unique and understudied and undervalued role in this whole picture and whole story of things. Because of course, Hong Kong is very small compared to mainland, right? 7 million people or 4 million people in 1980s, right? Its public image, when you talk to international scholars about the public image of Hong Kong, usually people recognize it as an international finance and commerce hub. Very few people will tell you that Hong Kong is a STEM hub. Very few people will say that. And if you look at the history of the data, will show you Hong Kong actually is a very latecomer in this STEM game, global science and technology game, right? For many of our colleagues here at Hong Kong, you must know that before 1990, none of the Hong Kong universities has any serious PhD programs. None. Okay, I actually go through. Let me show you in the next couple of slides. I have all the PhD graduation.
The country was the same.
Yeah, it's the same.
The same time.
It's the same,
Okay.
right? But Hong Kong kind of developed about 15 years earlier than mainland China does. 15 years, right? 15 years. So this is what we know about Hong Kong, right? But I will tell you, it just tells a partial story. It's not a full story. All right. So Hong Kong's hidden role in this paper, I was trying to show that Hong Kong is a surprising bridge in the sense that it functioned as an essential intermediary between mainland China and the international research community. It has greatly accelerated China's scientific development. So without Hong Kong, there are thousands and thousands of Chinese students, talented STEM students, they will not be able to receive advanced training in science and technology. And because of its unique geographic and institutional positions, so Hong Kong developed some very interesting research profile across different universities. So it's a very surprise bridge. And the key feature of this partnership is that it started sporadically before 1978 when China formally actually opened up. The relationship in terms of science and technology between mainland China and Hong Kong is what I call reciprocal but asymmetrical. Okay, asymmetric, because both sides benefit from that, but the role is very, very different. The role is very, very different. And Hong Kong's institution, they flourished through Western academic connections, institutional independence, and in a very critical time window, it received very robust funding from the Hong Kong government.
Robust funding?
Yeah, you don't believe that, right? Let me show you.
0.7% of
the overall GDP. I know it's a small percentage, I know, but
very little on the academic side.
right. I mean, but compared to mainland and compared to the to other parts of the global higher education sector, that's actually give Hong Kong scholars a big head start.
On the GDP, Hong Kong ranks 50th in the world in GDP for R&D. Very low.
I know.
But what you're saying, I think, is that, for example, we all apply for, and we have a higher percentage
Right.
in America than the department. So yes and no. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I will try to convince you. Okay, I'll try to convince you. Okay. So I think there are mutual benefits. Mainland China, they provide mostly mainland China provided many motivated graduate students, as many of the younger generation actually sits here. But Hong Kong offers resource, training, academic rigor, and international connection in a time.
I have to add, it provided also professors. We were able, as assistant professors, we could hire a professor in China as a research assistant
Oh,
in the late 1980s, because our salary compared to Beijing University was 100 times the salary of Beijing University in the late 80s, early 90s.
right.
So we could hire a professor as a research assistant for a short time.
That's what I call a head start. It's a head start.
But that's a long time ago.
Right, but it's very important. It is very important. So to be able to tell you the story incomplete, I have to rely on multiple sources of data, because I don't think any single source of data can bring us the big picture. So in this paper, it's actually a very quite long paper. So we use 4 sources of data, right? So first of all, we use bibliographic data from Web of Science. So essentially, we collect every single scientific publication by Hong Kong scholars and by scholars in mainland China from Web of Science, starting in 1980 all the way to 2023. So 40 years of data. It's about 4 million records. It's 40 million records, a lot of data. And then we also, thanks to the very nice library people in Hong Kong, so we collect all the PhD dissertation metadata from the 3 major universities in Hong Kong. So we collect every single PhD data from University of Hong Kong, from Chinese University of Hong Kong, and Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So we have the metadata. So essentially, we know who wrote that thesis, in which field, who are the supervisors, these kind of things, and the names of the author, and these kind of things. And thirdly, we have to rely on institutional archives to understand what's happening in a specific year. So which guests, which international visitors go to where, talk about what kind of things, these kind of institutional archives. So that include university annual report and Hong Kong government statistics and all kinds of report. And lastly, I read a lot of historical sources. So the biographies and memoirs of education leaders mostly from Hong Kong, but also scientists with a connection to Hong Kong, but say working in the United States or elsewhere. I will show you the detail in the next couple of slides. So bibliographic data, we have about 43 million Web of Science entries total from 1980 to 2023. Actually, this project, we spend most of the time of the project trying to clean this data. It's quite difficult to collect that kind of amount of data, and to figure out actually where does one piece of research article belong? And if you think about it, if you think about it seriously, there is no single definition, say, because scientific collaboration actually is a norm, right, in the community, not a kind of an outlier. So at least one author is from the designated region. We can attribute that particular paper to a country from Hong Kong, in mainland China, South Korea, or other places. So we have to do a lot of these kind of computer scientific magic to clean things up. So what we do is Web of Science has maintained all the corresponding address of each authors in your publication. So what we do is we read every address line in the publication, in that paper, and use that as the key kind of a piece of information to determine where does these authors actually belong to. It's not a perfect way, but we believe this is the current, that's perhaps the only way to do that. So we actually, we have to do some mathematical calculation to determine, to parse the entire universe of the papers. So say for all the papers in Hong Kong, we can first partition into two areas. So papers whose authors are all from Hong Kong, or papers with at least one outside collaborating authors. In the first category, we have single author papers. So if the author, say, is written just by Jerry alone, that will fall into the first category. Or multi-author paper where all authors are from Hong Kong. So these are what we call Hong Kong papers. And then we have to decide Hong Kong's international collaboration profile. So we have to look at, so papers where outside all collaborators are exclusively, say, from one particular region, mainland China, United States, or other places, or papers with at least one mainland Chinese-based author and at least another author from another country and region. And lastly, papers where the outside collaborators are from countries other than mainland China. So that helps us to to classify the papers into different categories. This is what we did in terms of the Web of Science data. And then, that's sort of the big picture, right? But we also want to understand if different universities play a different role in this entire picture. So what we do is we pick 3 universities in Hong Kong, the 3 major flagship ones in Hong Kong, as kind of a main case study, if I might call it. So we look at every single paper published by Hong Kong U, by Chinese U, and by Hong Kong UST, okay, Hong Kong UST. And for comparison, we also looking at their mainland collaborators. So for this category, we include 62, because there are about 3,000 universities in mainland, right? But not all universities are kind of they're doing great in STEM research. So we have to carefully select a sample. For this particular paper, we pick 62 universities in our particular sample. And these 62 universities include the top ones in the Nature Index. I think most of you know that. So Nature Group, the Nature magazine, they publish an index, yearly index, which calculate the high quality publications from particular universities, right? So we use the 2024 Nature Index. We have the top China 45, so the best 45 STEM universities in mainland China. We started with top 50, but we have to exclude things like Chinese Academy of Science. We have to exclude military institutions. We also have to exclude 3 Hong Kong institutions from that particular list. So we ended up with 45. And then we supplement that with 17 universities in Guangdong for reasons which will become very obvious later on, because the area which collaborate with Hong Kong, the most frequent is Guangdong province. So we include every single universities in Guangdong, in that public university, I should say, in Guangdong, in this analysis. So that's the universities included. This is the Nature Index. For those of you, if you don't know, you can go there, you can download all the list of papers. So in 2024, the best STEM institution in China is Chinese Academy of Science, CAS. It's kind of a no-brainer for those of you who understand. And then it's University of Chinese Academy of Science, UCAS, University of Science and Technology of China. This is the interesting part. The best STEM institution or somehow affiliated with Chinese Academy of Science, the top 3. Okay, and then you have the Beida, the Nanda, the Zhou, the Tsinghua, Shenyang universities, Shanghai Jiaotong, and Fudan. These are the top 10 institutions. We have them. We have them all.
So let me ask you, why then did you remove the Chinese Academy of Science? Because I was already wondering about that before seeing this slide, because you're talking about the science and technology system, not the academic sense.
Yeah, yes.
So I was wondering, why didn't you include that one? And now it becomes even more evident. It's important. So why did you exclude it?
I think we did both versions. The one versions have CES, the other version doesn't have CES. I think the reason for having CES is, the reason to exclude CES is it's not a university. That's just for the purpose of this particular paper. If we want to make just a university kind of a story, but I mean, I agree with you. If we look at the whole picture of STEM production, sure, in CES, I mean, my book is actually involves studying CES. So I can assure you that no matter we include CES or exclude that, the story remains the same. All right. So that's all of that. So for dissertation record, we have, like I said, we have the metadata from Hong Kong U, Chinese U, and HKU ST. So because the data all comes from the university library, and different library have different embargo periods, so we can have the same kind of a time window as the publication data. So what we do is we just focusing on Hong Kong U from 1990 to 2020. CUHK 1990-2020, Hong Kong UST 1995. The reason for Hong Kong UST to start from 1995 because it's a new university. It was just started in 1991. There are no PhDs, in the first 4 years of its kind of funding. And the dissertation record include title, author name, department, completion years. These things. We use that to understand how many students. What area does each kind of a dissertation fall into, and is the student coming from, say, local Hong Kong or from mainland China? It's an estimation. It's not a kind of the perfect way to classify that. And then we have also to map each departmental level to the faculty level because different universities have different organizational level, right? So it's for instance, Chinese U, the faculty of engineering will include all these divisions. Right, we are kind of looking at a not so detailed level of classification. So for our purpose, we only include dissertation from I think for Faculty of Science and Faculty of Engineering and Faculty of Medicine in Hong Kong U and CUHK, and for UST we include Faculty of Science and Faculty of Engineering. So what we do is we use an AI, we use a large language models to help us to parse through each author's name. So it tells us if the pronunciation of a particular author is using a Taiwan pinyin or a Cantonese pinyin or the mainland pinyin. Like I said, it's not perfect, but that's probably the only way we can do it, like in a relatively short period of time. So different romanization ways to decide, if the student, whether the student. Like I said, we do some cross-checking. So I actually hand check about 100 dissertation data to make sure that these our estimation are roughly kind of believable.
Could you eliminate the one, because there's some Cantonese romanization would be exactly pinyin.
Yeah.
Small proportion.
I know.
You can actually, right? If you want.
That will be kind of a robustness check, like we said.
But in aggregate, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter that much,
right?
It doesn't matter that much. So this is the dissertation data we have. So all the PhD data, Hong Kong U have about 38 in 1990. Chinese U have 11. Hong Kong UST, of course, doesn't have any. And that gradually started to, grow in year 2000. Hong Kong U have in just 10 years, right? Hong Kong U have about 200 PhD data. That's including everybody. Okay, humanities, arts, and science, and everybody. Okay, 200. Chinese you have about 107, and Hong Kong UST have about 51. By 2008, Hong Kong U has about 82, and Chinese you have a 203, and Hong Kong UST has about 150. And then we can, that's kind of reliable because we have their departmental information. So we understand that how many of these say 280 data dissertation are in STEM fields. So in Hong Kong U, that's about 170. A large, a very high number, okay, a very high number. But that's also true for Chinese U and for
We
for
don't
Hong Kong
include-
USD.
In our Faculty of Education, PhDs?
They are
That's the
here,
first one.
but they are not here. Yes, they are here.
Would they also include professional doctorates like?
No, only PhD. So no EDD, no other kind of
Oh,
PGC or these kind of thesis.
Yes.
And then the mainland student, which I have a graph later to show you. Okay, to show you. So institutional archive, that's kind of straightforward. So university annual report, and some places they have, say Hong Kong government, they have census and statistics about funding. That's where I got the funding data. All the UGC and GRF data, they have put online. I mean, Hong Kong government does a I think excellent
Good
job
data, right?
compiling all these kind of data. You can look through them, right? You can look through them. And for historical sources, I actually read all these biographies, memoirs, and autobiographies of the key person. So, for instance, Chen Fangzheng is a physicist. Actually, he is the first returnee to Hong Kong. He got his degrees from Harvard. He's a physicist. He stayed in the Chinese U. He's actually affiliated with Chinese University of Hong Kong. He stayed there for about 7 years, but his key role is actually as the University Council Secretary for Chinese U for about a decade. So he's a key figure, actually, arranging for a lot of different things. Tian Zhirong is the founding dean of science in Hong Kong UST. He spent 3 years there. He only spent 3 years there. After the university started, he was there 1988 to 1991, and then he went back to the United States. Qi Xishen is the first dean of science in Hong Kong UST. Reason Wang, which I don't think we need any explanations here. Charles Gao, of course, the university president of Chinese U. Kong Xianduo is another dean of science or dean of social science. Sorry, he is the dean of science. Qi Xishen is the dean of social science at Hong Kong UST, and other key figures such as Li Zhendao and Yang Zhenning, who are the first Chinese Nobel Prize winners in physics, and they actually play some roles here. Ma Ling is the Chinese U president in the 1980s, and other key figures. So I read every single one of these books, trying to understand the roles they played. And other important Hong Kong sources, including Zhou Shiyuan. He is not a university kind of a president, but he has been the university council. He's the president of the University Council of Hong Kong UST for about a decade. He's a very prominent Hong Kong local politician during that time. And regarding Hong Kong U, there are 2 excellent Chinese books, which one is in 1993, one is actually just published 2 years ago, Ying Chan's Hong Kong U at the Turn of the Century. That's the book. So I rely on all these stories, trying to come up with the full picture.
CityU president, Soulware in higher education. CityU.
Yeah,
President.
but the problem is I didn't include CityU in my sample, so I
Okay,
didn't read
okay.
that. I didn't read that.
Okay.
I will. I will.
Right.
Right. I will. So these are the kind of the 4 sources of data. So okay, the analysis, right? So the first thing I want to say to set the stage is in terms of international collaboration for mainland Chinese scholars, there's really an elephant, and all the other collaborating partners are what I call the cubs or minor partners. The elephant is the United States. There's undisputed. In terms of publication data, in terms of international collaboration, United States plays the most prominent role in this relationship, and Hong Kong comparatively is what I call the hub. So the scale of the Sino-American collaboration, the scale of that, in 1980, 9% of the Chinese paper had any international co-authors. In 2020, about 25, a quarter of the Chinese STEM publication has international collaborators. And the US play a dominant role in that, all right? And before the US-China kind of a relationship deteriorated in 2020s, it actually hit a peak in 2017, okay, in 2017. If we use a narrower definition, so papers only with Chinese scholars and their international co-authors are all from America. Okay, what is the number? It's about 9.27% of all the publication in the year of 2017. Okay, are from America. If we include, say, Chinese main authors, American collaborating authors from Hong Kong or from other places, that's another 12%. So altogether, the Chinese paper involving an American author, about 21% in 2017. This is a historical high. Okay, and after that, it goes downhill really, really fast. And if you want to put things into perspective, like I said, 21%, right? What about, say, Singapore? What about, say, Canada, Australia, or Hong Kong? None of them exceeds 10%. So it's a magnitude difference. It's a single-digit collaboration with that.
2017 was, you have as the point.
The peak, right? And then it goes down. It goes down.
It didn't peak in 2019, no, it peaked in 2017.
In 2017, but like I said, this is just a percentage. In terms of absolute numbers, it still goes up. Why the story changed is because the indigenous Chinese research, they catch up really, really fast, right? They are the denominators. Essentially, the denominator grows much faster than the numerator, right? So that's what we have. In terms of Hong Kong actually, we think about it's relatively small, but it ranks alongside with UK, Japan, and Germany as key collaborators. In the university kind of level comparison, it's very clear. Okay, it's very clear that even though Hong Kong is relatively small, the number of papers involving both a Chinese author and Hong Kong co-authors actually rank alongside with the paper the Chinese scientists they co-authored with scientists in Japan, in UK, in Canada, in any other places, even though Hong Kong was only 7 million people. Okay, 7 million people. And the collaboration grew from the Hong Kong side, okay, from 4% in 1990 to over 60 in 2020. Okay, so mainland becomes a dominant partner for Hong Kong, but Hong Kong is not a dominant partner for mainland because of the size difference. This is what I call reciprocal but asymmetric. Asymmetric. Okay, so for Hong Kong, the mainland side is kind of a lifeline. And Hong Kong's story is, like I said, it also is an important intermediary. So many of the research the mainland scientists conducted involves a three-way collaboration. So they have a mainland co-author, they have a Hong Kong co-author, and they have a third author, co-author from another country, another place. So Hong Kong actually plays that role very well.
Still.
Yeah, still very well. So in 1997, about 83 papers, so that's 2.29% of the entire Hong Kong paper production. In 2006, it's 68%. And that's about 6,800 papers. So that's about 28.43%. So Hong Kong is really kind of a bridging role, an intermediate, a middleman in science, even in science. Okay, in science. So this is the
okay. This is a really, really interesting statistic. So
actually,
I'm wondering the size of the system in 1997, Hong Kong. We only had 2 universities until 1991.
Yeah.
And then we had 3 until 1997, and then more. So, in other words, it wasn't so bad in 97 either. If you look at the
right, it is not that bad. Actually, my story, which I will, if I have time, my story will tell you that the key figures in the scientific kind of apparatus in mainland, they started to reach out to Hong Kong very early, way before 1997, way before 1997, the handover. This is why when Hong Kong was handed over in 1997, there are already four national collaborative science labs in Hong Kong. All of them,
national labs.
yes, all of them are in USD.
Oh,
yeah. Right. So these are actually the actual numbers we have. The publication from. I'm sorry. from 1980. This is the one from mainland China's perspective, looking at collaboration with the United States. This is the one from the Hong Kong's perspective, looking at the relationship with mainland China. We are still working on to revise the data a little bit, but this is the key figure. And you can see that for Hong Kong, the collaboration with mainland China is, like I said, 60% in 2020. From in 1990, that's about 3.91%. This grows like really, really fast. Okay, grows really, really fast. This is kind of the key aspect of the Hong Kong and mainland connections in science and technology. Okay, let me show you something more interesting. That's kind of the general data, right? So key collaboration locations for mainland China, okay, and of between Hong Kong universities and mainland Chinese universities, right? Like I said, we have 62 Chinese universities from the 2024 Nature Index, top 45 S&T, and 17 additional universities from Guangdong, okay, from Guangdong. This is the data, okay, this is it. So for each university, say, what's the first one? Shenzhen universities, okay, we look at all their papers from 1980 all the way to 2023. And then we analyze who is the corresponding author, who are your collaborators on that particular papers. So we look at, we classify them as Australian, Singapore, Canada, France, England, South Korea, United States, Germany, Russia, Japan, and Hong Kong. Okay, international collaboration. So the paper has at least an author from Shenzhen universities, and we look at the rest of the authors. Where do these people come from? And for this particular graph, we rank it by the percentage of Hong Kong authors, okay, listed there from the highest to the lowest. Okay, from the highest to the lowest. These are the top, the Nature top 45, and these are the Guangdong universities, the university in Guangdong. If you can read, I can go from the highest, from the list. I can read it, right? Shenzhen universities is the highest. Okay, it's the highest. So Shenzhen University ranks Hong Kong as its most frequent kind of collaborators in science and technology. The second is Jinan University. The third is Southern University of Science and Technology, so Nanfang Heda, right? And number 4, South China University of Technology. Number 5, Sun Yat-sen University. Do you see a pattern? All of them are from Guangdong. All of them from Guangdong. And if you look at these figures and these figures, they are basically comparable. This is one key thing. So Hong Kong's regional influence is largely in Guangdong. Okay. If you look at
the year of the
so I put all the year together, 1980 to 2023.
From 1980.
1980. Of course, Shenzhen University wasn't founded in 1980.
Sure.
Right. So if you look at, say, other places, say, let's say Nankai or Tsinghua, right? So Hong Kong, Tsinghua is here. So Hong Kong definitely is a minor player compared to the blue bar, and the blue bar is United States, right? This is what I call, the elephant. For majority of the top STEM institutions in mainland China, US is a dominant player. But Hong Kong ranks alongside with Australia, with Singapore, with Canada, with all these what we believe as advanced industrialized societies. So this is what I think the surprising part, because Hong Kong is so small, right? If you think about Japan, think about South Korea, think about other places. So this is what we see from the kind of a university collaboration data. So US ranks first for 44 out of 45 top 45 universities from the Nature Index. Like I said, US is still the elephant. Okay, still the elephant. But Hong Kong ranks highly among established nations and societies. So it ranks second most frequent collaborator for 16 universities out of 45. All right, it ranked third for 7 universities. I would say that's actually a pretty good number. The regional variation tells us that the top 5 Hong Kong collaborators are the Guangdong universities, the Sun Yat-sen, the Southern University of Science and Technology, the Shenzhen universities, and the Jinan University. And Shenzhen University is so unique. It actually collaborates more with researchers in Hong Kong than in the United States. Yeah, for reasons that I don't know at this point, but I think that's something interesting to look at. And then in terms of Hong Kong mainland collaboration patterns, from the Hong Kong side of story is a little bit different. Like I said, it's a reciprocal kind of a collaboration, right? Collaboration involves 2 parties, but it's not symmetric, okay? It is not symmetric. So the key finding is that, Hong Kong is not a major partner for mainland universities, but the mainland university is a primary partner for the universities in Hong Kong. Okay, if you're looking at Hong Kong U, Chinese U, and UST's international collaboration profile, in mid-1990s, the collaboration with mainland overtook with the collaboration with any other places. I can actually pinpoint the exact time. So for Chinese U is 1995, for Hong Kong U is 1994, for UST is 1997. Okay, 1997. So this is the graph if we look at from the Hong Kong's perspective. This is Hong Kong U, the Chinese U, the UST, if we combine them all together. All right. If we break down the international collaboration profile, like I did for the mainland universities, we look at collaboration with UK, with Canada, with Taiwan, with Germany, with USA, Australia, Singapore, and mainland China, of course. You will see this red line, right? It's basically in a league of its own. In a league of its own. And that takeover happens mid-1990s. Okay, before the 1997 handover. This is the interesting part. Okay, this is the interesting part. And there are some different significance by regions. So for Hong Kong universities, mainland partnership becomes essential. It shifted from US, Europe to mainland as primary partners in mid-1990s. And the research output heavily dependent on mainland connections. And for mainland universities, Hong Kong is a valuable, but basically a supplementary player, as many of its international players, collaborators, right? It maintains a very diverse international partnership in terms of STEM collaboration. You know, in that process, the US has remained a dominant player all the way through 2020, you know, when the Sino-American relationship really go downhill. This is what I have for that. We also did some research on the major collaborative subject areas, but I don't want to spend too much time because I know we have a lot of to talk about. Essentially, increased mainland collaboration happened across all STEM fields. It's not just in physics. It's not just in medicine, in biomedical engineering. It's not just in agriculture. It happens everywhere. But different universities have its own different kind of strengths, right? Hong Kong U, for instance, your medical school is the best probably in Hong Kong. So there's a lot of medical research going on here. But say Hong Kong UST, they don't have a medical school, right? They have physics, material science, and these kind of things. So different universities, they will play their hand differently, depending on what they have. So the data I can show you is, for instance, Chinese U, they really focus on agriculture and food system, alternative medicine, the Chinese medicine. Hong Kong U have a very balanced growth across all fields. It has an exceptional role in clinical and medical science and a historical strength in medicine. That's the thing. For UST, it's the engineering system, information system, environmental health, analytical instrumentation, and other, smaller areas. So again, these are the subject area. If we map the publication into their subject areas, we can see different things. I know it's a little bit too small to read everything. What you understand that what I want people to take away is we sort of we look at period from 1991 to 2000, 2001 to 2010, and 2010 to 2020. And you can see the growth, the collaborative pattern between Hong Kong and the mainland institutions grow across the border, okay, across border, a whole range of disciplines. whole range of discipline. Okay. So last part, explaining the role. Why do we have the story we have? Right. I think this is the interesting, but this is more historical, than a kind of standard social scientific explanations. I offer 3 explanations. First is the points of contact, so key figures, people who initiate contact, establish collaboration over time. The temporal characteristics, so it changes and over time. And lastly, geographic characteristics. Okay, so that's my 3 explanations. The first is early connections, right? In the early days, the Chinese scientific diaspora really played a very important role, right? So the scholars in Hong Kong, they initiate their contact with mainland STEM community, actually mid-1970s, before the end of the Cultural Revolution. Many of the Hong Kong scientists, they started to travel primarily to Guangdong, but to other places. Actually, the Yin Chan's book, if you look at the medical people, they started doing that 1974, 1975, very, very early on, okay, very early on. And the key early visits after the Nixon shot in 1971 actually is Yang Zhening. He's the first Chinese Nobel Prize winner. He actually visited mainland China from the United States in 1970. He's the first one to visit mainland China after kind of the Cultural Revolution. And Li Zhendao follows very soon, 1973. Biologist Niu Manjiang also did 1973. And Zhang Jieqian, who's the meteorologist, he followed in 1974. These people, they kind of, because the Chinese government during that time, they really want to, host prominent scientists from, overseas. So they host them. So the initial state of Hong Kong science is quite different during that time because, like I said, the science and technology department at Hong Kong U.S. and Chinese in 1970s and 1980s are relatively small. They're really, really small. Okay? They are very limited research focus through 1980s. For instance, I look at all the faculty list in the Department of Physics at Chinese universities in the 1980s. There are only 7 people with 1 professor and 6 lectures. Okay, with 6 lectures. And Chen Fangzheng actually had a conversation with Qiu Chentong, who's a very prominent mathematician. He was at Harvard during that time. And Chen tried to convince him to come back to work in Hong Kong. And Qiu Chentong tell him that there's no foundation for science in Hong Kong. Any real serious scientists were not going to Hong Kong. This is the conversation in 1980s, okay, in 1980s. So what they did is there are several key individuals where established sustained connections between mainland China and the overseas Chinese scientific communities, okay, communities. For instance, like I said, Yang Zhening did that in 1971, and he returned to mainland China every single year, okay, afterwards. Another Nobel Prize winner, Li Zhendao, he has this CUPSA. I'm not sure if you know that. It's the I think it's called Chinese University Exchange Program between physicists. Okay, so that's the first one. From 1979, the program ran all the way to 1989. So he sent about 900 physicists to study in the United States in a 10 period of time. He actually, this is the great part about him. He wrote with his hand. These days we have computers, we print out. He used with own pen and letters, write recommendation letter for each and single one of them. And James Lee, many of them know that James Lee, who was a professor at UST, he said, when I grow up, my summer job for my dad is to put stamps on all those recommendation letters, right? And they have like stacks of recommendation letters going into the post office. Because during that time, there is no GRE test in mainland China. So universities in America, they don't recognize the transcript, the GPAs or the subject matter. So you have to have somebody who has credibility to vouch for you. And Li Zhendao actually does that for about 900 people. This is incredible. Yeah, this is really, really incredible. And then some people started to have interest in mainland China. But before they actually work full-time in mainland China, many of them stop at Hong Kong as a first landing spot. Okay, Wu Jiawei, who is the founding president of Hong Kong UST. He's probably the most well-known story. in this overall history. He come back in 1985 and started with the planning of Hong Kong UST, they appointed him as the president in 1988, right? He served as the president of Hong Kong UST for a decade until 2001. The reason he's important, not because he's the president of Hong Kong UST, he's a physicist, but he's also the first overseas Chinese who climbed up to the administrative rank in the United States. He is the president of San Francisco State, which is not a major university in the United States, but he's the first. And then Hong Kong lured him back in 1988. Yang Zhening becomes CUHK's professor at large. So these days they call them chair professors, but in 1980s they don't have that name. Okay, professor at large, 1987. So Zhou Chentong went back in 1993. He's the first fields medalist in mathematics. Yao Qizhi, he's the first Turing Prize winner. He also went back to Chinese U. So these people went back one after another. They eventually all moved to mainland China. Actually, all three of them moved back to Tsinghua universities. But before they did it, they spent about 5 to 10 years in Hong Kong because they don't know, what's the situation in mainland will turn out. So Hong Kong kind of a very easy, waypoint, right? Outside China, also connecting to the world. So these are the important people. Raisin Wang visited mainland China in 1982, and he was greeted by Deng Xiaoping, the premier leader, during that time. He recounted in one of the articles, actually, I read, I found in the book. He said, Deng Xiaoping discussed 3 characteristics of the University of Hong Kong that could be maintained in the long term. First, it offers English language instruction, which facilitates international academic exchange. Second, the university has foreign professors, and he anticipated that China's future development would require many such talents, making the experience of the University of Hong Kong highly valuable for reference. Third, the University of Hong Kong served as an excellent platform for mainland scholars to interact with their Hong Kong counterparts, allowing a better understanding of the international academic community. He recounted in his memoirs. That's 1982. Okay, 1982. That's the first thing. Key people. All right. The second, there are some temporal characteristics. So there are different characteristics in different eras. So I think it's the rise of the Hong Kong is really, in Chinese sense, 天时地利人和, right? So it's really a coincidence of multiple things. So Kong Xianduo, who is the first dean of science at UST, he says that the returnees were shaped by their era. Without the civil war over 50 years ago, this group would not have existed. Had Hong Kong UST been founded 5 years earlier in the 1980s, these individuals might not have been ready to return. Had it been founded 5 years later, many would have been near retirement age. So this is the timing. It's really important. The professors, Hong Kong UST is able to lure back from mostly from the United States, are just entering their prime age. In their mid 40s, mid 50s, they are at most productive during their time. And most of them have established their names in the academia, in the United States and in Europe. So this is really a good time. And as Jerry said, there are 2 salary increases from 1988 to 1998, which greatly elevated professor salary actually in Hong Kong. One happened in 1983, it doubled in 5 year period, and it doubled again 5 years later. This is when Hong Kong becomes kind of an international hotspot.
There was actually a salary cut in 1998.
That's because of the financial crisis, right? Financial crisis, right? And the Research Council, of course, I know people have complicated relationships here, right? With Research Council, but they are the first. They are the first. They are explicitly modeled after the National Science Foundation in the United States. The primary reason, according to my read of the historical sources, is because UST just funded it, and they require so much money to build their campuses. Professors at other universities in Hong Kong, they actually complain to the Hong Kong government. You are given differentiating kind of a treatment to Hong Kong UST. Why we don't get the money? Because during that time, Hong Kong doesn't have the kind of government allocation of grant system, right? So that's the problem. It greatly benefited science and technological research. This is the data, Jerry. This is the data. I said I'm trying to use that to convince you. I know compared to the overall government expenditure, this is probably a small sum. But if you are a scientist, you are a researcher at Hong Kong U, at Chinese U, at UST during that time, you will see the annual grant, the awarded money. This is in thousands. Okay, this is in thousands. In the first 3-4 years, it grows about, so 27% from second year to first year, 29% from third year to second year, 79% from 94 to 93. Okay, 95, 96, 98. Of course, you have the Asian financial crisis in 1997, so it's kind of going backward a little bit, froze another year, but again, started 2-digit increase. I would say that's
The average, it's 205, 327,280. That's the average
That's the
SFT.
total awarded money in RGC, in science and technology.
Total
Total awarded money, funded money.
One grant, you could get 327.
No, that's the entire territory combined. This is the entire Hong Kong combined. That's in thousands. So you have, so it's about 327 million
Yeah.
dollars. That's in thousands.
Yeah.
That's in
So
thousands.
you need to add 3 more zeros.
Yeah, you need three
I
more.
can see the top.
Right,
So
right.
it's for all 8 universities.
That's all 8 units. But remember, in the 1990s, you don't have 8 universities.
Yeah.
In 1990s, you essentially have 3 universities with a bunch of colleges, which is just being upgraded to universities, which means they don't have a very robust science and technology department.
Which means with new universities and new faculty, actually the per ratio decreased.
Yes, you might say that. I think it will be very interesting to look at who actually get it, and
Yeah.
you people here know that we can look at that, right?
Concentration.
Because we can know who are awardees and who is getting that money. And based on my initial reads, UST people getting a huge chunk of
Sure.
the engineering money.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were ahead of us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were ahead. But the really interesting one, because as you just said, there were only 2 universities until 1991, there were 3. And then in 1997, all of a sudden you had 7 universities. But the rate of increase, okay, 23%, but look at the social science, humanities, 50% growth. That's because
I envy you.
people at Baptist and at Lingnan and those places, they were all applying for social science,
Yeah.
not for S&T.
Not for-
Systems theory.
Huh?
Growing from nothing is always tremendous.
Yeah,
Right?
indeed.
The more you have in the system, the lower the growth has to be, right?
That's right.
And I think even though the money in humanities and social science and in business is smaller compared to science and technology, but you are not competing for like a huge, I don't know, a telescope somewhere, right? You are not. So, I think per person wise, everybody is still kind of pretty comfortable in the 1990s, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can correct me.
Oh, yeah, that's
Interesting. Yeah, okay.
So that's the grant side of the story. In terms of PhD story, like I said, pre-1990s, all of the major universities in Hong Kong, they graduate about less than 50 PhDs every single year. 1990. That's not too far ago. 1990 is pretty recent.
Yeah.
And there's a dramatic growth through the 1990s. So Hong Kong, you grow from 24 from 1990 to 137 in 2000. Chinese U from 7 to 67. UST graduates first PhD in 1994, but 53 by 2000. So it grows pretty fast. All right, and here we do see the mainland student gradually integrated into that PhD pipeline. Okay, so in early 1990s, there are about 13% of science and technology PhDs in Hong Kong U are mainland student. That's just based on the guessing of their names in the dissertation data. All right. In Chinese, it's about 36%. By 2000, it almost reached parity. So about 49 to 50% of the PhDs in science and technology departments are from mainland. And of course, in 2020, if we look at these days, majority of the PhD students are from mainland. Okay,
I thought
majority
it
of
would be higher.
I thought, yeah, me too. I thought these percentages would be the 90%.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Medicine, for example.
Oh, medicine, right,
Medicine is
okay,
different.
okay.
but you all, I mean, for medicine, you have lots of local awardees.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
that's the reason,
Yes.
that's,
Otherwise, it's 90%.
yeah, I would think it would be
But it's over the
90%,
because
yeah.
of the
Right.
medicine.
So this is the number, the actual number of PhD degrees awarded. I break it down by science and technology field and science and technology field. So the yellow and the kind of purple are science and technology field, and the non-science and technology fields are the red and kind of the green ones. So the mainland, non-mainland students are here and the mainland students are here. So if you look at the purple one and the red ones, this is where most of the growth come from. Okay, mainland students who come here for advanced degree, okay? For advanced,
But here is where the asymmetry completely reverses. Because I'm pretty sure there's very few Hong Kong PhD students in mainland China.
yes, I totally agree. I totally agree.
I'm just kidding, I mean, but actually it's interesting because it reverses the.
Yes. Totally true, totally true. And the reason for that is like
Colleagues, PhD.
but still the numbers, the total numbers
numbers
are
are small.
relatively small. One of the reasons why you see this growth is the scientists, the science apparatus in mainland China, they recognize the value, they recognize the importance of Hong Kong actually pretty early on. Okay, so for this paper, actually, I read through every university's annual report. So UST actually did a pretty well job. They listed every important visitors, in their early years. So this is for 1992 to 1993 alone. This is way before handover, right? 1992, 1993. These are, from their archives, I dig out all the mainland visitors. So the red ones are the important universities. So national university or institutions directly affiliated with the scientific elites in China. So here you have Professor Zhou Guangzhao, who is the president of Chinese Academy of Science. He's a really key figure. He's a physicist, but you know what? When Hong Kong UST was just founded, he is the only mainland scientist got invited to serve on the presidential advisory board for 3 years. What's interesting is that there's a time actually in the history of Hong Kong UST. Zhou Guangzhao sits across Maurice Chan. You know Maurice Chan, the founder of TSMC, which is the Taiwanese chip manufacturer. Yeah, they actually work on the same table for about 3 years because Maurice Chan is the Taiwanese representative to Hong Kong UST. This is a very interesting story. And you also have the people, the Director General of the Department of Rural Science and Technology, the SPARK program, the 星火计划 director. You have the State Science and Technology Commission, the Vice Chairman. Hong Kong and Macau office, of course, they do that kind of visit all the time. The China Association for International Science and Technology Co-op, the president of PKU, the State Science and Technology Commission of the Jiangsu province, the State Science and Technology Committee. You see this kind of visit year after year, particularly Chinese Academy of Science. This is why they have 4, collaborated labs before 1997, because they have been sending their top figures to Hong Kong. I'm not sure about Hong Kong U because your annual report doesn't say too much who comes and who didn't.
Oh, this is USD.
This is USD.
Oh, this is what they.
This is just for USD. This is just for USD.
You didn't include Taiwan, right?
I didn't include Taiwan.
Yeah, because the UST brass.
Yes.
Wu Jiawei, most of those people he recruited were educated in Taiwan
Right.
and US, yeah. But a lot of them are from the south, it's interesting, Shantou, Fuzhou.
Right, it's close.
Guangzhou, Zhuhai, So I wonder about the vice chairman and the State Science and Tech Commission people, were they originally from the south?
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know about that.
UST, you probably know this, well, anyway, sorry. But I interviewed Wu Jiawei for the World Bank study, but Wu Jiawei was very important for getting the South China University of Science and Technology up. He was advising them
Wow.
to you know, to how to grow and everything. I remember he said that. Yeah. And they're really done pretty well.
So let me finish my last
Sure,
last
please.
part. So the geographic characteristics, right?
Right.
Like I said, the collaboration between Hong Kong and the mainland has a very heavy geographic tones. In that geographic story, Beijing is always the center because Chinese Academy of Science, they're located in Beijing, and all the top universities initially they are in Beijing. Okay, they are in Beijing. To a lesser degree, Shanghai also plays an important role because Shanghai Jiao Tong and Fudan University and CAS has some affiliates in Shanghai. But I think, so Beijing is the central position. It has actually about 13,000 co-authored paper. That's even more than Guangdong all combined. This is how important it is. And like I said, the role of Chinese Academy of Science is really important. In the entire 1980s, actually, CAS alone contributed over a third of the entire SCI publications of made in China. That's how important it is. So if we draw a map of China and we want to understand the sphere of influence of Hong Kong universities, this is what I would see that. So it's most intensively working with provinces close to, geographically close. So basically Guangdong, Fujian, and Hainan actually to a lesser degree. Okay, these. And here you have two hotspots. That's essentially Beijing and Shanghai. That's essentially Beijing and Shanghai. This is year 2000, year 2010, and year 2020. If we draw a heat map, okay, based on the provincial locations of the collaborative patterns in scientific publications from Hong Kong, you will see that Beijing is always like very red, and the Guangdong province is also very red. So these are the two most important areas, and then it's kind of scattered around, because I think places like Gansu, like Qinghai, they don't have very well established universities, throughout history.
So this follows the kind of main concentrations and secondary research concentrations of universities.
I think so. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So it looks like in the West, there's like no contact. I mean,
Yeah.
because Xi'an Jiaotong is there in the West, and
But that's
of course,
one
Zhou
place.
University.
Right.
Okay, Sichuan. Oh, I guess you got Sichuan.
I think there are two. There are different explanations. One explanation: these are traditional good universities, but they don't publish a lot, right? Here we're looking at publication data from Web of Science. That's the thing. That is the thing. All right. So we have already talked about Guangdong. In Guangdong, there's always a strong collaboration between Guangdong and Hong Kong. One of the reasons is because Guangdong province doesn't have a lot of universities, right? You all know that. Historically speaking, Guangdong only have very limited numbers of universities compared to its economic contribution, compared to its demography. So that's one particular thing, right? And of course, there's some strategic development. The industrial park with Hong Kong UST in the 1990s. Satellite campus from Chinese U and UST in Guangdong province, right? One in Shenzhen, one in Guangzhou. I hope one day Hong Kong U would have one. I heard you guys have one, right? So these are the things.
What was the last slide again? You said Hong Kong U would have.
Oh, the satellite campus.
Oh,
That's what I mean.
We're at the hospital, I guess.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's a good question, by the way. That's, there is a piece of land, but I don't know.
Right.
Anyway,
I know CPU moved
so-
there and
yeah. Okay.
Just one last thing.
listen. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just one last thing.
Sorry.
So one last thing. So the key finding, I know I went a little bit over time. So I think it's mostly organic development. I didn't find any kind of evidence to support a coordinated campaign. So basically each university went out of its own ways to establish connections with mainland. And it's driven by multiple factors and driven by multiple actors. I think what makes Hong Kong unique is it's a Chinese society with high concentration of Chinese scientists. It has some clear advantage if you think about compared to study abroad, right? If it's there's no time zone difference, there's no long haul flights required. There is English required, but of course, but and in daily life, if you're from Guangdong, you will fit in relatively easily. And of course, academic freedom with the Chinese context. And in terms of historical impact, I think this study challenges the view that Hong Kong is only a finance-focused city. Actually, it plays a major partnership role in the development of science and technology. And I think the government, maybe not as the whole, but in terms of early strategic support, they actually did a fairly good job in science and technology for academics in Hong Kong, and provided crucial support during a critical period of time. Like I said, mainland China catches very fast, but the catch-up usually happened after 2005. So the publication data can support that. So what my argument is, Hong Kong, you get about a 15-year time window before the mainland actually catches up. That 15 years is very important. You actually cultivated some very high caliber science and technology graduates, and they went back to mainland actually serving as professors and key scientists. Okay, so to close my thing, I think I find this in one of the annual report from Chinese youth. This is Ma Ling in 1984. Okay, so I think he wrote the Chinese version, and his team translated into English. I found it very very profound. Okay, he says that I have not for a moment lost sight of the fact that Hong Kong is but a minute speck of sand in the ocean that is China. On one hand, we must not forget either that throughout history, a new idea or new wind of change often starts in a small, imperceptible way. Then it gradually builds up its strength and eventually turns into a prevalent, irresistible movement, which surprises us with its magnitude. Now that the major changes in pursuit of modernization have already been set in motion in China, should not the people of Hong Kong, who have such a nose of following the wind ahead of its entire world, also rise to the occasion and contribute to the share and zeal of this spark? I think it's a very nicely written word. So I think to close the talk, though small in size, Hong Kong casts a long shadow in China's scientific awake. So I will leave it here. The paper, like I said, I put it online. I haven't published it, but it's as a preprint. Everybody is welcome to download, to read it, and to comment. Thank you very much.
Check the paper out.
Yeah, no, I can send it to you.
Where are you going
Send
to
me a
submit
copy,
it?
please.
I don't know.
How big is it?
What?
How big is it
Right now I have 35 pages. It's a little bit too long.
in terms of number of words?
20.
Is it combined with the biometric data and qualitative?
Yes. So I think I haven't actually given it too much a thought, because right now it sort of marries both social scientific research and historical research, but it's neither, right? So I think before I finally decide, guys here might have some better suggestions. If somebody will find this paper useful, I'd be happy to talk to you guys.
Divided into two, submit at least one of those to higher education. I'm one of the co-editors. I would love to get it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I must say, because I've been trying to, follow this also in recent years. This is the best data set, the
Yeah.
best analysis of Hong Kong's role that I've seen. So, I mean, it's really fantastic that you're here. And I hope you get all of that published, because people need to know. One of the things that we need since 2020 is to tell the Hong Kong story.
Mhm.
Because overseas, the Hong Kong story has been distorted in the last few years. And I think it's very important. The other thing that I realize, because there's always this impression, Hong Kong we were established for the modernization of China, to help China modernize. I think we have gained Hong Kong has gained much more stature because of the mainland and its proximity to the mainland. Because as you say, in the 80s and 90s, if you were writing articles about the mainland, nobody knew anything.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're writing a few articles on the mainland, and Hong Kong has, Hong Kong's visibility rose very, very quickly. So the questions, any on, yeah, we have questions, lots of them. If there are any online, I'm sorry, I don't have the chat box. So I don't know if anybody's sending any chat questions. But if you're here, you should have the priority to raise questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really fascinating. I was wondering your opinion, whether Hong Kong can maintain this kind of unique position or advantage. You're talking about motivated students from mainland,
Yeah.
including that part, because Chinese universities, mainland universities are getting stronger and stronger.
Mhm.
I find a lot of structural students there is less and less reason to come to Hong Kong because they can find better research teams in mainland.
Mhm.
And it's a much larger team, especially in STEM field, and very strong capacity, funding, everything. So what's the kind of projection for Hong Kong, whether they can maintain these strengths or advantages, or it might reduce because of the rise of the mainland universities?
Yeah, good
Yeah.
question.
I think Hong Kong still have some of its niches that the mainland doesn't really currently have. The kind of because the heavy hand of the administration in mainland universities is always kind of turns people off. I mean, if you look online, our young PhD students' experience in Hong Kong, I mean, many of you guys did research actually on this topic, right? I mean, in terms of how to work with how to please your supervisor, how to build up a relationship. In mainland, these kind of things are more important, and it actually turns a lot of people off, right? And many people think that's a distraction from the work they are doing. And I think Hong Kong, from its own perspective, it is very actively kind of reaching out to international scholars, trying to to lure them here. I mean, still, it's a free port, right? It's international free port. You can have a lot of things relatively easily. I mean, money, of course, is a big thing. It is a big thing because the mainland has been catching up that relatively fast. But I think Hong Kong has still have some really nice niches that that is if you can keep it, I think you can't compete in terms of the total volume. That's just not possible, right? But in terms of specific special areas, you still do, right?
Thank you, Professor. Actually, I have two questions.
Yes.
The first question is about Yang Zhengming's contribution about Hong Kong and mainland China, because I know Yang Zhengming is an honorary doctoral degree from
Chinese
University
yes.
of Hong Kong, but I don't know whether he did something else to increase the collaboration between China and Hong Kong.
Okay, interestingly, I think based on the current sources, it's not very clear what he, specifically did to build up the bridges. What we know is, so Yang Zhengming he received his Nobel Prize in 1957.
Yes.
Okay, and since 1968, Yang Zhengming actually has been coming to Hong Kong every year. Okay. Not to mainland China, because China was in during the Cultural Revolution. Right? So
maybe it's because he cannot go back to.
Yes, he cannot, and it's risky for many reasons. What we do know is at least in from the source I read, at least in 1968, Yang Zhengming, when he comes to Hong Kong, has been given the public lectures to ordinary Hong Kong citizens. Okay, so he inspired a lot of local Hong Kong scientists. I think there are at least one professor in Hong Kong U, another professor in Chinese U, because they listened to his speeches. They wanted that kind of motivated them to get into science. That's particularly the one thing. But you raise a very good point, because at this point, I wasn't able to get access to the Chinese university's actual archive. I get everything online, but there's a limit on what you can get online, right? I think there will be a very interesting story to look at their university archive, to understand who he worked with, who is his student, what he did with the departmental structure, during that time, okay? So that we can better understand his actual role. Right now, it's more symbolic. It's more symbolic because he is like I said, the first Nobel Prize winner actually come back.
I was wondering about one thing. To what extent, I don't know if you have this data, but it will be interesting to see if you could do the similar analysis that you did for the dissertations, if you could do them for publication. Because I was wondering, about the collaborations that started before the handover. And I'm wondering if these collaborations didn't start with mainland Chinese that were employed in Hong Kong universities. That because they have, even more familiarity with the mainland,
Yeah.
they were the ones really starting the whole thing. And now if you see the proportion of mainland Chinese academics in Hong Kong universities, you also see that it's rising, which fosters an even greater engagement, not only directly, but also by bringing in their colleagues to collaborate with colleagues in mainland.
That's a really nice idea. I should try that. I haven't tried it, but I think I can. We do know all the authors on these papers. I mean, we can run a similar things, right? We can understand who are say the main corresponding author on the paper. Is he from Hong Kong, or does he have an origin in mainland China? What is does that kind of relationship actually change before 1997, after 1997, or even in year 2000? That's a very good idea.
Yeah, because we have a growing number of mainland academics.
Right, and then they stay in Hong Kong. They become academics themselves, and started to cultivate students. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, actually, we didn't hire, we still don't hire directly from the mainland pretty much, but those that came when the titling system changed in the universities in Hong Kong, they attracted the high grade people who were studying in America to come to Hong Kong. But they didn't really, our faculty didn't recruit one until 1996. So the science here, the first was 1996 in the Hong Kong faculty event. Chinese U was earlier, of course, but the science faculties were much earlier. I think you're right. I think science, medicine, and so on. But Hugo's point about those first ones that were here, they did, I think, help to recruit others and cooperate in research and so on.
Right.
And I had to clarify, I did that point that our salaries were 100 times higher, and it's very true. It's a fact, 100 times. But when I said we hired mainland professors as researchers, what I meant was that we were able, with the amount of funding we had, and they had very little, we were able to really kick off a high level of research cooperation. I mean, there was a book in that period of time, 北大教授买肉饼, Hong Kong, the professors at Beijing University had to have second jobs to get. It wasn't Beijing University, some professors in Beijing were trying to get second jobs, but that has changed, obviously. Listen, we're over time. As you can tell, your talk from our audience here, and where many of us are doing research in the same area, are extremely pleased that you're here, and probably wish we had another 2 hours to talk about your data, which is the best data set I've seen on this subject, and everybody's shaking their head and agreeing. So thank you for coming.
no problem.
And if I could just add one thing, when are you gonna do the social science?
Oh.
That's what we really want to, because we're.
I think, I give that, many people ask me about it.
Oh, they do.
My worry is that I don't have a lot of good things to say about social science, not for Hong Kong, but for the mainland.
Okay.
I don't have too much good things to say. So I'm really afraid I'll piss some people off.
Okay.
So I have to give it more thought, how to better, write my story. But this story is pretty straightforward and has a lot of nuances, but I'm very satisfied with that.
If I might add one small thing.
Yeah.
I just missed one small component in this whole story, the policies. Because I'm sure policies, I mean, Hong Kong, I can tell you that from the last maybe 5 years, a bit more, there's been a pressure to collaborate with colleagues in mainland. There is a push, a clear push. Before it was more informal. Now I think it's very, very evident.
Thanks, Hugo. One of our friends, Giulio Marini, is actually listening to this from Italy. So good morning. What time is it? Yeah, it's good morning, right? Giulio, I think you had said hello and have a question. You just said good morning, okay? The second question, great, from Viviana, or maybe she's.
No, it's Julio. Viviana is the wife of Julio. He's just with her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Account, it's
Questions. Slide 19, I did not get what the estimates are for. Is it about joint PhDs, measure of how many are done on the mainland? Otherwise, an estimate sounds like a regression. That's one. And two, I wonder whether the peak in 2017 might be interpreted also as a result of a adversarial stance the US started to have in China.
Yeah.
The US adversarial stance goes way back before that, I think. But anyway, you
Yeah,
can answer
so
that.
I think for the second question, it's relatively straightforward. Indeed, I think the US-China relationship started to deteriorate in 2010.
Yeah.
2010s, but the collaboration still, kind of go its way until 2017, until some major things happen. I think two major things happen. One is the deterioration of the bilateral relationship. The second is the Chinese domestic research has really been ramping up during the time. So like I said, the numerator the denominator really grows up. So that's kind of the thing. Regarding the first thing, so this table is about the PhD dissertation. So number of PhD dissertations awarded, PhD degrees awarded in that particular year. I called it an estimate because the number of mainland Chinese PhDs is really an estimate. We don't have a very kind of a scientific way, if I might call it, or accurate way to understand how many PhDs are actually from mainland China. So here I have to guess based on how their names are spelled. So that's why I call it an estimate. It's not an estimate in the sense of a regression table. We have a coefficient of any sort. No, it's just I have to guess each people's name. Are you from mainland China or are you not? This is not a perfect way, but currently I can't think about a better way. Of course, maybe I can read every single one of those 20,000 thesis. That's one. I mean, even that you can't really you can't really know.
Just ask AI, just ask ChatGPT or DeepSeek, figure it out. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you for that, for answering the question online, because he's a frequent visitor to our university, professor, who's in Italy. And since he's Italian, he should have a special pride in it. We Italians, as those of us with Italian names. Again, I hope that you will come back, and because I know you're going to publish this and you're working on a book. Zhou Yisu is working on a book. I hope that when it gets published, he will come back and we will have a special occasion for that. We'd really like to see that. So thank
I
you.
will. This is most of the doctoral graduates also who work on Hong Kong students studying.
Yeah, so.
Oh,
How many?
really?
Yeah, so